Do you have a passion for vintage textiles but have yet to work them into your wardrobe? And are you unsure of how to deal with the limited yardage of thrifted textiles? In this episode, you'll hear my conversation with Marcia Riddington and Lisa Hughes. Marcia and Lisa, along with the rest of their collective, Curtains to Couture, share a desire to demystify working with existing textiles and to encourage people to wear what they really want. Lisa and Marcia share their tips on sourcing, sewing and styling, so you too can wear curtain couture with confidence and joy. So stick around a few minutes and we'll crack on with that. Welcome to Check Your Thread, the podcast that will help you sew more sustainably. My name's Zoe and I'm obsessed with sewing. I've been blogging about it for over 16 years and I'm the creator and host of the popular handmade wardrobe challenge, Me Made May. But, like many people, I've become increasingly concerned about the climate crisis and I'm looking at the way that my lifestyle contributes to it. So in this podcast, I'll be nerding out about making clothes whilst exploring how to minimise the negative impact that it may have. I really hope you'll join me in this journey. Hello, lovely listener. Enormous thanks for hitting play on this episode today. You made a good decision, I promise you. Anyway, I hope you're doing well. I'm going to jump straight into my sustainability win, which is part of a long-term sustainability win that I hope will span years. So, after being on the waiting list for about 2.5 years, I got an allotment plot finally. I am so happy. It's really big. It's super overgrown. I'm a bit intimidated, but I'm super excited about the possibilities of growing food for my family. Getting the call from the site manager last week about getting a plot coincided very nicely with last weekend's Seedy Sunday, which is the annual seed swap that takes place in Brighton. Longer term listeners of the podcast will know that it's an absolute highlight of my year. So I took some poppy seeds with me that I'd saved from some plants that I'd grown from seeds that I got from the swap last year, which is so cool. And I took home a few different types of beans to try growing on the allotment and a variety of beef tomato, which is something that I was missing from my current seed selection. And if that wasn't all awesome enough, I also got to meet up with Pippa Chapman, who you might remember from episode 112. Pippa is the gardening expert who gave me all sorts of awesome advice in that episode. Well, she came down to the swap where we got to hang out for a couple of hours before she had to head back up north. And it was so great to get to know her better. So that's my news. Sorry, not sorry, but expect allotment updates throughout the year. I want to say big thanks this week to Ali and Ghostia for signing up to support the podcast via Patreon. And big thanks to existing patron Anne for upping the amount of their support. You are all awesome and I'm so grateful. If you are interested in joining the Check Your Thread Patreon community, or you just want to help keep the podcast afloat, please consider signing up to the Check Your Thread Patreon. You can do so for literally any amount per month that makes sense to you, and it takes less than 2 minutes to sign up. If you're an iPhone user and you have the Patreon app already, please, however, don't sign up to the Check Your Thread Patreon using the app, as Apple claim 30% off all subscriptions made through their app. Instead, please head to the website patreon.com/checkyourthread in a browser. Once you've signed up, you can still then use the app to keep up to date with the Check Your Thread Patreon feed and community. Thanks so much in advance. Okay, let's get on with this conversation with Lisa and Marcia. So I was already aware of Marcia and her incredible style through the Sew Over 50 Instagram account. And I totally flipped out when I discovered the Curtains to Couture Instagram account. There is so much to love about it. If you're into vintage and reclaimed textiles at all, it's going to blow your socks off. And I love how it's a wonderful collective born out of a 6-way friendship. It's such a special thing. After we recorded our conversation, Marcia shared with me their mission for 2025. One of their main aims is to build and facilitate supportive sewing communities, where those with little or no confidence or experience can learn alongside and with the help of more experienced sewists. Is there anything this world needs more right now than supportive communities lifting each other up? I think not. So until next week, when we'll continue the thread of appreciating existing textiles, but from a slightly different angle, take care of yourself, take care of your loved ones, find and participate in community, whatever form that takes, and enjoy. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining me for the podcast. I'm so excited to speak to you. I'm so excited about your new account. So you are 2/3 of the collective that is Curtains to Couture. And I saw today that you have a new member. So congratulations.
We do.
Brilliant. So I'm really looking forward to hearing all about this. But let's first start by getting to know the both of you a little bit better. So can we please start by finding out who you are, where you are, and what fills your days? Lisa, would you like to go first?
Sure. So I'm Lisa Hughes. I live in the Cotswolds and I work in Stratford-upon-Avon, which is where I'm talking to you from this morning, from my office at the Royal Shakespeare Company. So what fills my day is my day job. So as I said, I work for the RSC. Aside from that, I have 3 boys and 2 rescue dash hounds that have just arrived. And apart from that, a good deal of sewing.
Amazing. So what do you do at the RSC?
Well, lots and lots of different things, but broadly, try and look after the money.
Right. Thank you. What about you, Marcia?
Well, I'm Marcia Riddington. I now live in Bury St Edmunds in Suffolk, and my day job, I have an antique shop called Smoking Monkey Antiques, which I've had for about 8 years. And that takes up a lot of time because if you're not there, you're out looking for stuff for the shop. So it's fairly full on.
So what are the opening hours of your shop when are you actually there?
Generally speaking, Wednesday to Saturday, which is enough, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're out and about hunting for stock the rest of the
Which
time.
is the fun part.
Is it?
I like that. I love that, yeah.
Do you? So where do you go hunting?
Antique fairs mainly, and antique centres and charity shops. I must admit, people bring stuff in as well, which is a mixed blessing. I think I will be polite and put it like that, yes. But it's fun. It's great fun. And it's what I'd always wanted to do anyway. So.
Amazing. So let's kind of work a little bit backwards. Like, I'd like to hear, first of all, about your new account. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about the thing that drew you together, which is sewing with reclaimed textiles, curtains in particular. And then towards the end, I'd like to ask you a bit more, kind of more broadly about your sewing lives, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So aside from the two of you, so who's in the Curtains to Couture collective? Like, how did you meet and how did the idea to create the account come to be?
It's a very good question, that. Do you want to take that one, Lisa?
Shall I start? So,
Yes,
Curtains
start.
to Couture is made up of myself and Marcia. Then we have Jill, we have Sorrel, and we have Claire. And then most recently, Nikki has also joined us. And it kind of came about via Instagram. So, in that beautiful way, how Instagram collects like minded souls and kind of draws them together like magnets. So, we found each other through Instagram and through a shared love of sewing. And then from that, there was a really irreverent WhatsApp group that was set up, which got named Curtains to Couture. And whilst there was an awful lot of sewing talk on it, there's an awful lot of other things on it that probably I shouldn't tell you about because I'll probably be killed.
I think that's wise. That's wise, Lisa.
What goes on WhatsApp stays on WhatsApp.
Absolutely. Yeah. I hope we never get it called in for any sort of public examination, because it's an extraordinary WhatsApp communication group covering all sorts of different parts of life. And actually, it's an absolute joy. And one of the things, your phone buzzes and you never quite know what's going on that group. And from that, I think that the idea of a Curtains to Couture Instagram account came about. Together with, there was a meet-up, wasn't there, Marcia, in East Anglia when I was unwell. And
That's
I think
right,
that
yes.
it kind of came from there.
So, Marcia, have you all met up in real life then?
Well, we've all met. No, actually, that's not true. That's not true. I was going to say we'd all met in real life, but I've met you, but not at the same time as
Yeah.
the other girls. I think it was Jill finding this roll of Sanderson fabric that we all had a piece of, and we were all going to make something out of it.
Oh, fun.
And then we were all going to meet, like Lisa just said, but unfortunately, Lisa was poorly, and wear what we had made. And that, I think that was the kind of starting, well, not the starting thing, because it was there before, but that, I think, in my head, is where it probably all took off.
So what's the goal then for the account and the hashtag? Like, is there one?
I think it's about inspiring people to have a go. More than anything, my sense is it's about that. And I think one of the things that binds us together is that we are none of us wallflowers. So I think we all take great joy in pleasing ourselves in terms of what we wear. I think that's a common thread that has brought most of us to sewing in the sense that you are able to create something that perhaps nobody else can have. And it's a very individual thing. And I think one of the things we see most commonly on our account is comments around, I wish I had the confidence to wear that. Or I wish I had the confidence to have a go at doing that. And so my sense, there is a goal about inspiring people to just get started, to reuse and recycle, and to not be afraid of trying something different or of looking different. What do you think, Marcia?
I totally agree with you because I get lots of private messages saying, "You're so brave." And to me, brave means being a firefighter, working on a lifeboat, not walking down the road in a frock made of an old curtain. But I think a lot of people are very concerned what other people might think of them. And I just think we we're trying to encourage people to lose that, and they should just wear what they want to wear what makes them happy. And I think the other personal thing with the account is there are an awful lot of accounts that are making us feel guilty about the way we live. And I think you can be sustainable and have fun at the same time. I don't think we all need to feel guilty about what's going on in the world, but
Absolutely.
we can all do our bit to improve the sustainability and to encourage others. And I think that is one of the things we want as well. Although we do have to mention some of the awful landfill situations, but I think generally it's got to be fun, sustainability and fun.
Absolutely. And I think that your account does a really, really good job of that because you are all clearly like, you have your unique style, you're expressing yourself, I love the way that you do show pictures of yourself, like sometimes getting together, and that is really a source of joy for you. And I really like as well the way that when you are showing not only your own projects, but others that you have found within the community, that other people have, you're highlighting other people's projects. You show a whole range of projects, don't you? It's not just necessarily like a full coat or a full dress. It's a bag, it's a dog coat,
Yeah.
it's an accessory. You don't have to suddenly commit head to toe to it, do
No.
you? There's different ways there's different ways of exploring and finding your own path. And I think you've done a really good job of highlighting and bringing other people in as well.
Thank you.
I know that running an Instagram account is a lot of work. So how have you divided your tasks and your roles? Because you have your like weekly features as well, don't you?
We do. So we have a follower Friday and we have a sustainability Sunday. And then in between that, there could be ad hoc or random posts. So Claire, I think, is probably the most organised of us, would you say, Marcia? in,
I think so. I think
in,
so.
in,
Yeah.
in terms of keeping the show on the road and keeping us all relatively organised.
You need someone, don't you? You need someone like
We
that.
do. And now Nikki's joined. Nikki's in the process of putting an actual calendar together for us to remind us of who's doing what. So basically, somebody gets assigned a task. So somebody will be assigned a task of the follower Friday in any given week, and somebody else is given the task of Sustainability Sunday, and someone else is given the task of replying to comments and DMs. So those are the three main tasks in any given week. And then aside from that, we get together every so often in a discussion a bit like this online and have another talk about what things might be coming up. And in particular, to have a chat about what challenges we might be setting, Marcia.
Oh, tell us about that.
Yes, because we've got big ideas for the new year, which I don't think we'll tell you about at this moment,
No, it's
just
top
in case
secret.
they don't
Okay.
happen. But no, so
In case we hold you
it's
accountable.
well, it's all going to be about encouraging people to sew, because I think a lot of people think that it's very hard to do dressmaking. It can actually be relatively simple. You've just got to follow a few rules and you can just do it. I think it's more imagination. I think that's the important bit. As long as you've got basic skills and the will to do it, you can do it. And I just think it's encouraging people to learn those basic skills and just have a go.
Exciting. So you've got some challenges and some content coming up around that.
Some really exciting content, yeah.
Absolutely watch this space. Amazing. So what I really love your Follower Friday post. How does it work? Do you find things that people have posted and then say, oh, can we share it on here? Or do people submit their projects? How does that work?
I think actually we ask people to hashtag and then we can just go through the hashtags. That is it. Although some people do send them to us, which is nice. But we just go through the hashtags and see what's in there,
Oh,
which is quite
fantastic.
exciting.
That makes your life easier, doesn't it? So,
Yeah.
Marcia, have you found, or Lisa as well, like, have you found through the hashtag or through searching what other people have created, people using curtains in like a new or way that you found surprising that you hadn't thought of yourselves?
Nothing much surprises us, I don't think.
That's true. The amount of dogs walking around dressed in old curtains came as quite a surprise to me. Mentioning no names here, of course. Very
Guilty
smart.
as charged.
Even though the dogs, to be fair, did not look very happy about it. But yes, it's just, I think that's it. I think it's just treating an old curtain like a piece of fabric, isn't it, really? And there's been some lovely Christmas decorations and that kind of thing, and things for the autumn and Halloween as well. So it's not just clothes, it's decorations and accessories and all kinds of gorgeous things. But I have picked up one or two quite nice ideas, I have to say, actually, over the last month or two.
Oh, really? Like what? Which ones?
Well, I think it's the decorations, I think, mainly, like made out of all of the fabrics. Really, really lovely, which obviously I intended to do for this year, but you know how it is.
I do.
No. And I always say I'm going to start making my Christmas decorations in February. And of course, I always wait till the middle of December and then panic. But got so many ideas for next year.
Do you think that having this account and having this hashtag is almost going to give you yourselves some, I don't know if accountability is the right word, but an extra motivation to kind of put some of those ideas that you've got in and like actually follow through and create?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I think another common thread that binds us together actually as a group is that we have no shortage of ideas. But I, in particular, have a terrible issue with finishing things or having far too many projects on the go at one time. Yeah, which is partly my ADHD,
Right.
and in the sense that I can be halfway through something and then all of a sudden I'll see something else that inspires me, and I think I've got the perfect piece of fabric for that and go off and do that. So every now and then I'll have a weekend where I try and set myself the task of finishing everything that I've started to kind of get my surfaces clear. But within 2 weeks, I'm back to where I was. So
How many projects do you tend to have on the go at the same time?
Oh, sewing projects, I can probably have 3 or 4 on the go at any one time, plus a pile of mending. I kind of sit with that relatively comfortably for a while, and then every now and then it becomes overwhelming, and I feel the need then to try and force myself to finish them all off before I start anything new. But I don't think we are short of ideas, Marcia, are we?
That is the great problem. But the problem for me is I can make relatively sensible plans to make what I need. But then I find an old curtain or a piece of fabric, and that's it. It just has to come home, go in the washing machine, and that has to be the next thing I do. All of my sensible plans just have to be put to one side. I'm very fabric led, I think, really, is what I'm saying.
So talking of curtains, I really think that like sewing with curtains or bedding or like table linens, they're a really kind of good gateway, aren't they, for people who maybe would like to be a bit more sustainable in their fabric sourcing, but they don't necessarily maybe feel ready to start with like existing garments, possibly, because like they're like those kind of bed linen or even towels, maybe they're the closest that you're going to find often in a charity shop to like a length of fabric, aren't they? So but of course you've got the restriction of yardage. So have you got any tips for how people could work with those resources when obviously there's a limitation in the amount available?
I've kind of developed patterns that use very, very little fabric. So if it's a small piece, I just make a small pinafore dress to wear with jeans. Because I also think as well, if you want to get a garment out of a piece of fabric, you will. And it might mean spending most of the time is actually cutting the thing out and piecing together. But if you want to do it, I am absolutely convinced you can. I will not. I will not give up on that. I find that very satisfying to actually have about a square inch of fabric left when I cut something out. I get great pleasure from that, far more than actually having yards and yards of fabric and you can just do it in the conventional way. It's so much more fun.
So that kind of imposed restriction is part of the challenge and the excitement
Oh
for you.
yeah, absolutely.
Have you ever used like a zero waste sewing pattern or a minimal waste sewing pattern that really results in very little left over?
I've never used a zero waste pattern. I'll be honest. The only patterns I ever use are, generally speaking, the Japanese ones. Or I tend to what I tend to do mostly is make things up as I go along. So I can't really answer that question, I'm
Fair
afraid.
enough, fair enough. I've seen on your account that you're a fan of the Japanese sewing books. Could you explain a little bit how those work for people that might not have heard of them before?
Well, one of the sad things is you can't buy them in the UK, or if you can, I have never seen them. They are just very, very charming. The styling is superb. I think they're designed for sort of very young Japanese women, very small, petite Japanese, which I know I am an old English lady, so they're not actually aimed at me. I know that. But the instructions are quite vague, I think. So I think you've kind of got to know what you're doing a bit. And some of the books I've got are actually in Korean or Japanese anyway. So I just tend to look at the pictures. But all of the patterns are in the back. So you buy the book and you've got the patterns and you've got ideas for styling as well. But I think in the 80s and 90s, I was totally obsessed with Japanese street fashion. And then I was just so excited when I realized that the Japanese sewers were producing these wonderful books. I think the first one I found was in Helsinki in English, which is bizarre. I've looked all over this, everywhere, every bookshop I go into, I look for these. And you just can't find them. And I just think it's so sad because they're wonderful.
It's a bizarre choice not to get more translated and imported, isn't it? Because I think that they're a really exciting resource that is definitely
They really
you've
are.
got to really want to find them, like you clearly have been.
You do have to watch the sizing on them, though, don't you, Marcia?
Yeah,
Because,
how
as
does
you
that work?
say, well, they are so tiny.
Yes.
I think generally that often you will have to double check the measurements, and you can find yourself even if you're not a larger size in the UK, you might find yourself in an extra large in a
Yes,
Japanese
I am the
pattern.
biggest size in them. But, so yes, they aren't very big, but they're quite basic shapes, a lot of them. So they wouldn't be difficult to increase. And actually, there is one now. It's an older Japanese lady who's brought out a book, and the sizing in that is actually larger. But
Okay.
you've still got the same cuteness, but slightly larger sizes. I'd forgotten about that one.
So, Lisa, do you have any tips for people that would like to give this a go, but are maybe a bit like, oh, I don't know, because there is a limited yardage, and I'm not sure how to approach it.
Well, again, like Marcia, I am a big fan with working with what you have. I think it makes you much more inventive. And I think one of the other things that probably all of us in our group do, Marcia, I think you probably do more of it and Jill particularly, is actually kind of splicing different fabrics together if you need to. So, a favourite kind of thing that all of us might do is match a floral with a stripe. So you might have a bodice and a skirt in a floral, but actually if you've run out of fabric, you might make the sleeves in a contrasting stripe. The other thing that I've been interested in recently, Merchant and Mills have launched a under a metre challenge. So if you look on their account, they have been really pushing that idea of what you can do with under a metre of fabric.
Oh, I love that.
And they've got, I love it too. So they've got a whole range of patterns in under a metre. But as Marcia says, most of us in our group will often not work from patterns at all, actually, and just kind of follow your nose. But I quite like that idea of just working with what you've got.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we talked about the limitations of the fabric. What are the benefits of using these type of textiles as a basis for a sewing project?
Well, no pun intended, but curtain fabric hangs really well. And it really does. One of the things I absolutely love about working with particularly old curtains is that they tend to have the fabric has a bit of a life of its own, and depending on what you're working with, so if you're working with an old brocade, for example, it tends to almost have an inbuilt sort of slight structure with it. One of my favourites would be a really, really time-worn linen, so that it becomes incredibly floppy and tactile. And I think actually if you put all 6 of us into a church hall and shouted go, that's probably where we would all be looking. We'd be looking for the really floppy linen probably first.
Give me that altar cloth.
I know, and it would probably get quite vicious.
It would.
So I think there's something about the drape of the fabric that I really love. But for me, I think there are benefits around saving the planet, obviously, that forced kind of ability to be inventive, and also the sense that you'll never turn up somewhere and find somebody in the same thing as you.
Unless you've got a massive roll of Sanderson fabric.
Well, I guess, yeah, like we had over the summer. But even then, we kind of went, it was interesting, actually. 5 different garments, wildly different.
Interesting.
But all from the same bolt of cloth. And again, that's really interesting.
I'm going to have to find that is that on your account? Will I find that if I scroll?
Yeah.
Okay, exciting.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So did you let each other know where you were going to go with it? Or is it just like, surprise?
It was a bit more of a surprise thing, wasn't it? I think a couple of us kind of did a bit of a show and tell a bit sooner, and the others kept it under. I kept mine under wraps because I wasn't sure whether it was going to go horribly wrong, because I bit off far more than I could chew in that project, and ended it with one of those emphatic, I am never doing this ever again, but I probably will.
Okay. I'm going to look. I'm going to find it, and if it's okay with you, I'll put the picture in the show notes so people can see what you all created from that fabric.
Sure.
So, Marcia, what do you think in terms of like what the benefits are for working with secondhand textiles, curtains in particular?
Well, I think I love clothes. I love making clothes, and I know I have a lot of fabric, and it would be wrong to keep buying new all of the time. It's a sustainability thing, I think, probably first and foremost. But because of my job, I spend a lot of time at antique and vintage fairs anyway, and you just see the most amazing fabrics. And I love anything that has had a life. I don't like new things. They're just slightly sterile sometimes, I think. And I love things that have faded. And that's one of the things I love is an old curtain that has faded over the years. I just love the way the colours go. I just think are absolutely gorgeous. And you just find different things. And because I don't think you ever go out looking for specific fabrics, specific things.
Yeah, you can't have a shopping list, can you, of what you're hoping to find?
No, you can't. No, you can't. It is so exciting when you find something really, really, really beautiful, and you just can't wait to get it home in the washing machine and up in your sewing room. It's just fun, and it's nice to know that you're not being part of the problem as well.
Absolutely, yeah. You're not encouraging the production of new textiles, yeah. So it sounds like you're very as you say, you're very fabric led, Marcia, and you like get the fabric and it goes in the washing machine and then it's on the cutting table. So at what point in the process do you figure out what that fabric wants to be? Is that when you found it in the antique shop? Is that when it's hanging up to dry? Is it when you've got it on the table and you're seeing what you can fit out of it? Or is it all of those things?
I think it's all of those really. It's hard to say because it's something, if I do find something I really like, basically I'm just thinking about it all the time and I can't wait to get working. And sometimes you do actually have to wait a couple of weeks because life takes over. But generally speaking, I find a piece and there are about 10 different things I want to do with it. And so it just kind of depends on the day when you actually have the time to cut it out, really.
I think there's that kind of paralysis for a lot of us when we've got a precious piece of fabric and it's like, oh, I need to make the right decision. But it sounds like that you are willing to like, you know what, I'm going to go with this. I'm not going to leave it on the shelf for 6 months. It's going to happen.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
What about you, Lisa? At what point do you figure out what that fabric should be?
Um, Sometimes it's absolutely immediate. So, like Marcia, I'm very fabric led. So, I will often find a piece of fabric and know immediately what I want to do with it. Other times, I might just fall in love with it, take it home, wash it, iron it, put it on the shelf, and it may take a while for that idea to emerge. But I mean, I'm a devil because I can be in somebody's house and going, so were you thinking of changing your curtains at all? So yeah, I've had massive curtain envy before in people's houses. So don't let me in your home.
Don't go to any Airbnbs.
Yeah, but I would say ordinarily I see a piece of fabric and I know what I want to do. And then, as we were talking about earlier, and if there's not enough of it, then you have to really stretch your thinking to figure out how you're going to achieve what you want to achieve.
That's really exciting.
Yeah, there are worse habits to have, right?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's clear how like Marcy was like finding fabric all the time as part of your day job. So Lisa, for you, your day job does not involve rooting around places like that. How do you source yours? And do you have any tips for people trying to source secondhand curtains to sew with?
Although you say that about my day job, what I do have one floor down below where I'm sitting right now are our costume workshops.
Ooh.
And because we work to zero or minimal waste at the RSC,
Ooh.
we have big boxes in the corridor of fabric that you can just take home and reuse. So I have, there's a picture of me somewhere in the box when it was most recently refilled. You know, I have this thing that I think the stuff finds us.
Ooh.
I'm absolutely convinced that a lot of the time the fabric finds us. And sometimes that's as obvious as, you know, strangers will knock on my front door and offer me fabric.
Really?
Yeah, which is an absolute joy most of the time. Sometimes not so much, but you know, I'll find a place for it to go nevertheless if I'm not going to keep it. But I am offered quite a lot of fabrics, and I think between us as well, there's a little bit of a mini economy going on in the sense that one of us might be out and see something that either they know the other person is looking for, or will think, actually, that's not for me, but I think that would really work for someone else. So Jill, our fabric whisperer, is an absolute magnet for fabrics, isn't she, Marcia?
Yes, she is a very good friend to have, I tell you.
She is.
What's her secret? How is she the fabric whisperer?
I think she has connections.
Oh,
I'm not sure I can say
in the spiritual
much.
plane or in.
Well, I'm not sure I can say much more than that because I think I might be in trouble. But she's very well connected in the fabric world. She has some amazing fabrics that pass through her hands. But she will often put onto the WhatsApp group, you know, I've come into these, which are not necessarily for her, and I think she has far more fabric or has access to far more fabric than she could ever use, and so we all benefit from that. But again, you know, when I'm not at work, I can't walk past a charity shop without looking in. And I've got a number of charity shops that will say to me, I've got a bag of something in the back you might want to rummage through whilst you're here. And so, that's happened several times. I think my biggest thing was actually not a piece of fabric, but a Couture Dior beaded evening dress.
Oh my goodness.
That had been dropped off in the bottom of a manky bin liner. And, it had a bit of seam work that needed looking at, but they were like, we don't know what to do with this. And I thought, well, I do.
Oh my goodness. That makes me so relieved that you were there at the right place, the right time.
And that's what I mean. I think there is a touch of serendipity about it. But I think for all of us, people will often say to us, oh, you're so lucky. You always seem to be in the right place at the right time. And I think yes and no, because I think some of it is perseverance, actually.
Yeah, you've got to put the hours in, haven't you?
Yeah. You can kiss a lot of frogs in this game.
So, Marcia, do you sell fabric and curtains in your shop also, or how are you deciding what comes with you and what goes into the shop?
Oh, I do actually. I've started selling old fabrics in the shop, and the nice thing is I've got to know a lot of very nice ladies through doing this. It's the same with the doll's house stuff as well. I've got to know nice ladies now. They know there's always stuff like that in my shop. But I tend to, if I see nice fabric, I cannot leave it. I have to buy it. And Lisa's right. It might not be for you, but I know it would be perfect for somebody else. So I generally, if I really, really like it, I keep it. But then if I've had something in my stash for about 3 or 4 years and I haven't used it, I know really that I should pass it on to somebody else.
Well, that's a good yardstick. That's a good rule of thumb. Yeah. So it seems that your main tip for sourcing fabric is have lots of other people also looking out for you.
I mean, I'm very lucky as well. Some people I don't know from actually lots of different places in the world have actually sent me fabric that they've seen this fabric that they thought I would like. And it is so exciting to get a little parcel with the most amazing fabric in. And it's just so kind and so nice. It's just lovely, really. It's a very nice community.
Absolutely. Is that people who've found you on Instagram or something like that?
Yes, it's people who know me on Instagram, yeah. It's so kind.
So in terms of whether or not there are certain projects that kind of lend themselves better to being made from curtains, it sounds like pinafores are your go-to, Marcia, as in that's something that you can make that doesn't necessarily require a lot of fabric. Do you have any other project recommendations or any patterns that you would recommend for people?
Well, I'll be honest, I don't know a great deal about patterns apart from my love of the old Japanese sewing books. So it's then not things. Oh, there is one pattern that I think if you're looking to make a coat and you've never made a coat before, there's the Lotta Jansdotter Pilvi pattern coat, which I've got. I must have about half a dozen of them. It's such a beautiful, simple pattern that doesn't require a great deal of fabric, actually. And it's so wearable and so smart. It's just a beautiful pattern to use.
Great tip. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Lisa, what about yourself? What would you recommend?
So I tend not to use many patterns either. I've got a basic bodice block that I drafted years ago that is at the heart of the vast majority of what I make. But what I would suggest, if I'm recommending to beginners, I think the Merchant and Mills trapeze dress is a great basic dress, which is a good jumping off point for lots and lots of things. There are lots and lots of easy hacks you can do.
Yeah, because there's a sleeve and there's a no sleeved as well, isn't there?
Yeah. So I think that's a really great pattern. The Carson dress is another one that is a great jumping off point for beginners.
Who's that by?
I can't remember.
I'll find it and I'll put it in the show notes.
But the Carson dress is another one. And then in terms of a jacket pattern, my favourite would be the Sister Mag 52-3 Duster Coat, which is a little bit more complex than the one that Marcia has been talking about. But I have worked with friends that are beginners with that, and we've got there. But yeah, I tend to be pattern free, generally speaking, yeah.
Ah, interesting. I guess you've got more flexibility with them if you're not restricted to a what can I get out of this particular pattern. In terms of like more broadly, I mean obviously your sourcing of your textiles is very much more sustainable. Like is there any other ways that you find yourself sewing more sustainably?
But I think there's a big mending movement, which is amazing. I'm constantly I've got 3 boys, and I've got a constant pile of
I
things that
bet.
need mending. Particularly the middle son, who's 6'4" and got arms like windmills, and probably provides maybe 3 or 4 items a week that need mending. And I wouldn't say I'm great at it, but it's good enough to hold. And I'm a big believer in trying to salvage things like that. I've also got 2 new rescue dachshunds that have eaten 4 or 5 hats in a matter of weeks.
Oh no.
So they're on my mending pile. And I really like mending in the autumn and winter months. And I think if you don't want to have an evening sitting at your sewing machine, you can actually put your feet up, be on the sofa, maybe have the TV or a podcast on, and have a pile of mending. And I think there's something really satisfying about doing that. I do have a little bit of a fixation with some of the Instagram accounts of the people that are expert at repairs. And my favourite is Alexandra Brink.
Right.
And watching her repair woolen items or fabric, and some of the most extraordinary things that you would think are beyond salvageable, I just find absolutely extraordinary watching that. It's an absolute skill, and one that I really don't have. But there is another piece, isn't there, around alteration as well. So actually, if it's past being able to salvage as a repair, you might be able to do something else with it. And I think that's a real joy as well.
Absolutely. So when you're repairing and you're mending, do you tend to favour a visible mend or an invisible mend, or is it kind of like case by case situation?
For me, it's case by case. So I've just done the backside of my son's black cords,
Right.
and I've gone for as invisible as I possibly can.
Yeah, that's not
for
the one
those.
that you want to highlight too much, is it?
Yeah, but in other things, and I think one of the things we're all fond of, Marcia, will be the very visible patch repair.
Oh yeah,
Going for something
absolutely.
that's a real contrast is beautiful. And Marcia's got jeans, and as has Jill, that are absolute works of art, I think.
I am wearing them as we speak, in fact.
I've seen them on your Instagram. They look incredible.
Yeah, and they kind of get better with every patch, right?
Oh, they do, yes. Falling down, you see, is an opportunity now, not just a minor
When
disaster.
you've gone off your legs.
Exactly.
Marcia, what's your relationship to sewing more sustainably beyond sourcing your fabric secondhand?
I enjoy rescuing things from charity shops that are really nice fabric, but the garments are frankly not very nice and nobody wants. So I often buy things in charity shops that are nice fabric, but the design and the shape is really awful. And I enjoy transforming those into something that I actually want to wear. I find that very satisfying.
Absolutely. Can you give me an example of a project that you've worked on that you found?
Well, I've recently bought I think it was a few months ago, I bought a very shapeless tunic, but it was a very nice, soft needlecord in a beautiful shade of green that I've made a jacket out of. And I've worn it so much, and that was on the pound rail, so it was waiting. If no one picked it up, it was off. So that was nice, and that's something I often do. I find that very satisfying, as well as patching things, because I love patching things. I just think
So
it's
you're
fun.
visible mending all the way.
Yeah, I mean, apart from socks, well, I just I'm not an expert mender, but it is good enough to continue wearing, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Actually, what I find is another top tip for the winter. I line a lot of winter clothes with old flannelette sheets,
Ah.
which you can get in some amazing patterns. And of course, people don't want flannelette sheets anymore because we've all got to, well, I personally haven't, but most people have got duvets. And they're just so cozy to make petticoats or line your clothes with. I tell you, a pair of curtain trousers lined with a flannelette sheet are incredibly warm, I can tell you that. And I think
That is a very good
very
top
cozy.
tip. Marcia, you are an amazing garment repeater and outfit creator. Do you have any tips on planning projects for like maximum mix and matchability?
Well, it actually happens by
Oh,
accident,
really?
I'll be honest. If I see a fabric I like or a style or something I see, I'm slightly addicted to Pinterest, which I know is wrong, but I actually am. And I see something I like on there and I think, yeah, I want one. And as long as I can find some nice, I would never go out and just buy fabric just to make it. But I kind of keep the idea. So if my things do match, it is an accident. Because I think, to be honest, if you wear them with confidence, things that shouldn't match actually look okay together.
Oh, I like
Does
that.
that make sense?
Absolutely. What's your relationship with colour? Like, do you have specific colours that you kind of tend to gravitate towards, or are you just kind of more of a magpie?
I like colour. I think because as a child, being a ginger child in the 1950s, you were forced to wear lemon or pale blue. You
Really?
couldn't wear bright colours. And it's my act of rebellion, you see.
So ever since, you're like, I want all the colours.
I love sort of reds and bright yellows and bright greens. I just love bright colours. I just can't help myself. They make me feel happy. I've tried wearing favourite colours, but they can look brilliant on other people, but I just can't. I don't feel right in them, so
Fair enough.
I just don't. I dress like a toddler. I'll be honest. I dress like when you see little girls, and you can tell they have dressed themselves, regardless of what their mom has
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
because that's what my daughter used to do, and that is really the way I dress, really, like a toddler.
Like a toddler who's been allowed to dress themselves that day.
That's right. You got it.
What about you, Lisa? How do you put outfits together, or with how do you consider colour?
I gravitate towards kind of more subtle, washed out colours. My mother would say slurry. Um,
What's the Pantone reference for slurry?
I know. And yet, I had my colours professionally done a few years ago. Yeah, my husband bought it for me as a Christmas present and then kind of regretted it when I came back from the consultation. A, in tears, and B, going, this all has to go, which he hadn't thought about.
Oh no,
because
the repercussions.
Yeah. It turns out that actually my colouring is such that I really kind of come to life with very bright kind of jewel tones. I've actually got a emerald green taffeta skirt on today.
Gorgeous.
And it is true, actually. Whenever I wear these very jewel coloured tones, I will undoubtedly get comments on how I'm looking. So I kind of think it is a thing. There is some science there. But it's interesting because they are not the colours that I would normally reach for. So I kind of have a bit of a battle ongoing between those two things. But I think as I get older, I just veer much more towards now just wearing what I want to wear, what makes me feel good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So let's go right back to the beginning. Like, how did you even start sewing, and how much are you sewing these days? How much of a role does it have in your life? And what about you, Lisa?
So sewing has always been in my life for as long as I can remember. One of my earliest memories is of my mother chugging away on her Singer sewing machine. So she, for a while, quite a long while, was a machinist, if you like, for a living. And when she wasn't doing that, she would be making clothes for us on her Singer treadle machine. And you could always tell what mood she was in by how fast the treadle was going. So if there had steam coming off it, you knew to give her a wide berth when you got home. But the funny thing is, I don't have any memory at all of my mum actually teaching us to sew.
Really?
It kind of morphed into, so I'm one of 4 girls, and I think 3 of the 4 of us have absolutely got the sewing bug.
Interesting.
I never remember her teaching us at all, but it's always been in my life.
Amazing. So is sewing for you now the antidote to sitting on a computer all day? Or
Yeah. I mean, I did for a while commute into the city of London. I had a job in the city, and I would sew all the way there on the train and all the way back again.
Really?
Yeah, and it is an antidote to what I do. Not that I need an antidote necessarily for the day job, but I find I almost get itchy palms and feel the need to pick up a needle. So if I'm not on the machine, invariably I will have a needle in my hand at some point during the day, so pretty much every day. And if I don't quite manage a stitch, then I might manage going in and stroking my stash.
you have to be connected to it in some way.
I do, yeah.
What about you, Marcia? How did you learn to sew?
I don't remember. It's something I've always done. I used to make clothes for my dolls when I was young, and I can't ever remember not sewing. But it's something I've done all of my life. But you kind of go through stages where you sort of do quite a lot. It was when I was a teenager. You kind of had to make your own clothes because you couldn't afford to buy them because they were a lot more expensive than they are now. We were paid an absolute pittance. So you kind of had to. And then as life went on, I've always sewed, but not quite as much as I do now. It has now become an obsession, I think, to be honest. I mean, one of the reasons my shop closes at 4 o'clock, not 5 o'clock, is so I can get a half hour in my workroom
Oh, really?
before I cook dinner. Because I kind of have to sew every day, or knit, or do something like that. I've just got to. It makes me feel very happy. And what I tend to do in the evenings, I sit with my husband and we have some kind of crap telly on, and I am generally hand stitching, embroidering, or knitting, and I just find it very, very relaxing. Very relaxing. I just love it. It's kind of part of my life.
Yeah. So last question, what's on your sewing table at the moment?
Nothing. It's so sad.
Oh, no!
Because I have told myself the shop is very busy at the moment. Life's very full. So I tidied my sewing room, and I say table, it's three big mats on a bed, to be honest. That's my sewing table, is empty. And I've got so many plans for after Christmas you would not believe.
Yeah.
So yes, I am being sensible now. There is nothing on
That's
there.
very restrained.
And it hurts.
Oh,
But I did finish my Christmas frock.
oh,
You
yay!
did, you did.
That was vital. That was vital.
Is that on the feed yet?
Mm.
It
check
is,
that
yeah,
out.
it is.
Brilliant.
It's another one based on a little Japanese girl.
Was that the tiered one?
Yeah.
It was in reds.
Yes,
I saw that today. Oh, that's amazing. So that's such a good example of how you can make a lot with a limited amount of fabric by combining. That was the perfect example. Yeah.
No, I was quite pleased with that one.
Gorgeous.
I'll admit.
If it's okay with you, I'll pop a picture of that in the show notes so people can see your gorgeous dress.
That would be fine.
Thank you. Lisa, what's on your sewing table right now?
So typically for me, I have a dress that I'm making from some old Sanderson curtains.
Very on brand.
I have an artist's smock that I'm making from a genuine decorator's filthy dirty dust sheet.
Oh, I love that.
Oh,
Spattered with paint.
Oh, amazing.
That I managed to hoodwink out of a friend whose husband is a professional decorator.
Oh, I love that.
I've got yet another Christmas pudding that I'm making out of some old vintage patchwork. I've made too many of those now. I've been going to bed and my hands have been like claws, so I need to stop. And I've got a pile of mending.
Right, wow. So when you get home, do you kind of see, like, what do I feel like I want to work on?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So where can people find you?
it's just my name, because I didn't realise when I went on Instagram you could give yourself a fancy handle. So it's just my name,
Fair enough.
Marcia Lois Riddington.
Brilliant. And Lisa, where can people find you?
So my account is vintage_darling, darling spelled DAHLING, and obviously our group account is @curtains to couture.
Amazing. I'll put all those links in the show notes. Thank you both so much for giving me an hour of your morning. It's been so delightful talking to you. Thank you so much.
Lovely. Speak soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this episode and are left feeling inspired. For more info about the podcast, including show notes for this and every episode, head to checkyourthread.com. I'd love to hear from you, so if you have any comments, questions or ideas for future episodes, please get in touch by emailing zoe@checkyourthread.com or find me on Instagram @checkyourthread. Massive thanks to Patrick Potter for production support, to Sylvia Seller for the awesome logo design, and to Simon at Palm Skin Productions for the music. This ad-free podcast would not be possible without listener support, so if you feel you are able, please consider signing up to the Check Your Thread Patreon. For the equivalent of buying me a coffee each month, you'll be making it possible to continue producing regular episodes. Links can be found in the show notes and on the website checkyourthread.com. I hope you'll listen again next week. Until then, take care. Bye!